Good day, everyone. Today we welcome conservative Christian Ms. Cheryl Chumley, who is an online opinion editor, commentary writer, and host of the Bold and Blunt podcast for the Washington Times, and a frequent media guest and public speaker. She's the author of several books, the latest entitled Lockdown: The Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom, and Socialists Don't Sleep, Christians Must Rise or America Will Fail. Welcome back to the show, Miss Chumley.
It's so great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Great. So let's get into it. Boy, we're living in crazy times, it seems.
Yeah,
It's been a whirlwind of events the last few weeks for sure. We have seen a failing president exposed as having a failing mind. We have also seen a failing media exposed for covering up his failing health, and a miraculous assassination failure caused by a failed security plan to protect our former and possibly future president. What is going on? And is the media doing its job?
So, no, the media is not doing its job, right? Let's just start with that one. It's simpler. The media used to be filled with people who were committed to the idea of watchdog journalism, right? Which meant not just taking press releases from the politicians and printing them or just mouthing them on TV, but actually making sure, vetting those statements for truth. And that's gone by the wayside. And I actually think the media has been corrupted and infiltrated by communists and Marxists, socialists. They're all collectivists, really, and they all have at root an intent to destroy America. So the media is not doing its job. You, as a as a reader or listener of news, have to really do your own research. And for your first question, what's going on? Look, if you don't believe in God, then everything right now is confusion and chaos. If you do believe in God and you read the Bible and you believe biblical truths are actually biblical truths, then you can see what's being played out in America, in the world today, is basically the battle of principalities. And, every day I wake up and instead of being drugged down into the deep darkness of the political world, I look at what's taking place in politics from a biblical perspective first, a Christian perspective first, followed by the Constitution. And that gives clarity. And you can see that there are very many evil, nefarious forces that are not only trying to destroy America, but basically trying to just bring in this demonic force and blot out all evidence of God in this life.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think every Christian who is faith-based and has a family and just trying to live a simple life, there's two things that they mostly love, which is obviously their faith and their Constitution. That is absolute because the Constitution was created not by man, but it was created with inalienable rights. And there is no doubt that we have been under attack. And this is why I think when we talk about divisiveness in this country, it's not divisiveness based on politics. It's divisiveness based on faith and those who understand and have their eyes open, and those who don't and who are lost. And obviously, we have to win, and we are living in revelations without a doubt. So yes, yes, we have to refer. I completely agree with you. We see so much going on right now in our government. There's supposed to be a check system for we the people. We've been witnessing the hearings in Congress. For everyone paying attention, there's so many problems with the branches and oversight. And is there a justice system anymore? And of course, the media is pushing a biased narrative. Um, where do you see this going? How do we have a check system for the media?
Well, it's interesting because you yourself are doing a check system for the media, right? And with my work at the Washington Times, I try and do the same. So there are voices out there that are committed to reporting the truth. And there are Americans with a mindset for discernment, a spiritual gift of discernment, even, that are committed to spreading that truth as well. And so when you ask where do we go forward, you said something interesting a couple minutes ago. You said we have to win. Well, we do have to win, but really we have to recognize that the win has already been made, right? Christ died for our sins. The win is already there. So win from a human perspective, in my view, means just not giving up the fight, right? It means waking up every day and determining that whatever area of influence you have in your life for that particular day, you are committed to just living out biblical truths, glorifying God, walking a straight and narrow, fighting for constitutional rights and so forth. And so to me, that's the win that we need to keep in mind, because if we're looking at a big win where, all the evil is gone, that's not going to happen. And we're going to get depressed about our losses.
You're 100% right. I mean, this is why, the extreme left, the Marxists have been losing their minds because they never expected such a fight back from moms in the school districts. They never expected, people, small people who really never cared about politics to get involved and push back. And I think they lost their minds from it. But obviously, you poke a bear too hard, a mama bear, and that's what you're going to get. And certainly we always want to help protect the innocent, particularly our children. And when you attack your faith, you attack the family, and obviously the children are always the first to be harmed. Those are the times that we live in, and God has a way of picking imperfect people, right? In the Bible, we are imperfect people, but He certainly chooses the right person for the right time. And regardless of what people think, you have two presidential right now candidates who are running. One is faith-based, and the other one, I don't know what she is. I really don't. I mean, one day she's Indian, one day she's Black. I mean, who cares? But, at least we know nothing about her moral value except the things that we do know about, which doesn't say a whole lot of good things. But, she doesn't want to answer any questions. Have you seen her being interviewed by any journalists? Have we seen her VP candidate, Tim Walz, be interviewed? I haven't. So how are they being true, at least to the people, to be accountable?
Yeah, there's a reason for that, right? Why Democrats shelter their candidates. First off, Kamala Harris doesn't really have the mental chops to field questions from serious journalists who would hold her accountable for the things she said, for the things she's done, and so forth. And second off, the media really does the carrying of water for the Democrat Party. The Democrats have learned for years now, since under Barack Obama, that they don't have to have press conferences. They don't have to deal with journalists that they don't want to deal with, because the media will step in and cover their bases for them. Look at all the apologizing and clarification that the media has done on behalf of Joe Biden for the last 3+ years. Anytime he makes a misstep, anytime he says something that's utterly ridiculous or that shows his mental demise, the media step in and they say, well, actually, he meant this. I think he meant that. And so they don't have to have their candidates stand up there and field the fire. And they've successfully gotten away with it. And I think that's how they're planning to run this campaign of Kamala Harris as well.
And it's very interesting. One of the things that J.D. Vance has said, which to me is a big red flag, obviously, is that he accused the Democratic VP candidate, Tim Walz, of lying that he fought in combat, which is outrageous, and that he has a case of stolen valor. Um, Now, if anybody does a little bit of research, which I did, I went online, I said, this is really awful sounding. I didn't know much about Tim Walz except that he was a massive communist, who let his cities burn down. What a candidate, what a great pick, right? He wants to defund the police and all these other things, but he matches, the ideology, of course, of Harris and whatnot. But, you know, I just, it should be on every front page. You lied. You're a liar. You've been lying. And, it's just, I'm still in shock that you can get away with this stuff.
Yeah, he made a comment when he was discussing gun control. He slid in the middle of his sentence, the weapons I carried when I was in war. And so J.D. Vance pointed out, and several others did, of course, that that's a lie, because he never was in war. He served something like 24 years in the Army National Guard. And right before his unit was to be deployed to Iraq, he dropped out and he ran for Congress instead. And the timing was so significant, it was so close to the deployment, that many have concluded that he dropped out because he didn't want to go to war with his unit. And so for him to say, when I went to war, the weapons I carried when I went to war, that is a blatant, I don't know if he misstepped, or it seems to me like it was pretty blatant lie in order to advance his political career. But, we have to pay attention to statements like that, because Democrats constantly look at Joe Biden, all the lies he's made, all the political lies he's made, and he gets outed for it, and yet they still continue to hold power. And again, this goes back to the power of the media to support the Democrat Party.
Yeah, it's mind blowing, absolutely, because, your word we were raised to believe your word means everything. And people are being crowned for complete fakes and liars. But this is why people hate politics in general.
Yeah.
But anyway, as an opinion writer who you are and host of the podcast Bold and Blunt, you have a lot to say about the state of our nation today. So tell us about your latest book.
So actually, I have a nonfiction coming out in January, and it's called God-Given or Bust: Defeating Marxism and Saving America with Biblical Truths. And it speaks basically to the state of the nation right now, the failure of those, particularly in the Christian community, who supposedly know better about American exceptionalism. That is, that our rights as individuals come from God. The quieting of this community, which has led us to where we are right now in America, which is very dark and perilous times, an open door for all the globalists to come in and run their agenda through, and also a welcome mat to all the anti-American forces in our own political system. So that nonfiction is coming out in January, but I have a fiction coming out this month. It's Christian fiction. It's called Chloe. And this is a book of God's grace, showing how God works to bring those with the harshest, most darkest of pasts into the light.
So where can people get these books? Obviously, not the one coming out in January. We look forward to it, but would it be Amazon or would it be to your website? How do we get it?
You can go to Amazon right now, and you can get Chloe, my fiction, and you can also pre-order God-Given or Bust.
Oh,
Thanks for that. Thank
yeah,
you.
fabulous, because we need good literature. Unfortunately, they're taking out Shakespeare and all this kind of racist,
Yes,
classics, and replacing it with Bob and Joe, instead of Jack and Jill and that
yes.
type of stuff. And, as conservative Christians, we've always kind of minded our business. What you do in your house is your business. We're going to pray for you, right? But we
Right.
don't butt into people's lives. And certainly they butt into ours because they think that we're, not the norm anymore. And that's how evil kind of tries to trick you, right? So, we have to be careful of what our kids are reading, what's in our libraries, and having a great book like Chloe, I think sounds amazing, obviously.
Mm.
Um, so, we do see there is a balance, and I think you're right. The people who are autonomously researching their own media get it. Okay, this is why you have the failing, CNN, MSNBC, hardly anybody's watching these stations anymore. And people are streaming, I think, more than ever now. That's why Tucker Carlson, Dan Bongino, War Room, there are places where you're drawn to because you're hearing facts, it seems. Do you see over the next 10 years, the media changing further? I mean, what's going to happen to these stations? Are they going to survive, or is it just going to kind of more transform into an individualized kind of media platform where people will pick and choose?
That is a really interesting question, and I'd love to do like a deep dive research into that. But just off the top of my head, I would say look at what's happened with Twitter, now X, right? And Elon Musk's fight back to free speech in America once again. And I would say that going forward, that it's going to be a trend to return to more free speech, more tolerant speech of, excuse me, all opinions, not just the far leftist view. And if you look at ratings for CNN, we had that capsize in CNN. They started that new project. It was, I forget the title of it, but I'm sure you recall it. It was just a year or two ago. They started that new podcast type thing or video blog type thing that lasted maybe a couple months, and then it went under because nobody was watching. I think Americans in particular are fed up with the censorship and the far leftist push through the mainstream media. People are definitely aware of it. And off the top of my head, I would have to say that there will be a rebound from it, that at least those media outlets that lean left, they don't get by with claiming to be the unbiased truth teller out there anymore. They'll be put in the category of far left where they belong.
I'm so glad to hear that. We need to be a little hopeful. And the reality is that there's been so much censorship. And you're right, Elon Musk has kind of been spearheading that, Truth Social, Gab. There are certain areas, obviously, that people know to go to at least find some type of balance. But if November 5th rolls around and this election does not go the way we hope, that's why everybody needs to get out and vote. Vote early if you can. Bring your friends. This is, we hear it every time with the elections. This is, the biggest, most important election ever. Well, this time it really is, folks. On November 5th, if the conservative voice is silenced, it may be silenced indefinitely. Would you say that to be true?
Yeah, and you make a good point. The biggest election, most important election ever. We say that every time a presidential election rolls around, but this one truly, if you look at how under Barack Obama and now under Joe Biden, things sped up in this nation about open borders, about polluting the public school systems with anti-American propaganda, and about the force of globalism steamrolling into America. Another 4 years of that, just open borders alone, we're not going to have in this country a conservative voting voice that matters if we don't get out and vote for the candidate who guarantees liberty and freedom and tolerance for all, not the nutcases that the Democrat Party is bringing forward.
Yeah, recently I've been reading about what's been going on in Britain, and how they monitor free speech and social media, and the fact that they will show up at your house, but officers will show up at your house because you propagated a violent or misguided viewpoint by just sharing or hitting like on something. A lot of people need to know that that's the case where we can become, we're like a step away from that. If it's happening in Britain, was our sister, country, right? It's happening in a lot of areas. And I think we really need to be more aware of what's going on there, because that's what they're trying to do here, aren't they?
Absolutely. And those who might deny that and say, oh, that'll never happen here in America. Look, I would point to the COVID years because that's exactly what happened. This is in our lifetime, right? We have an example. We don't have to go back in the history books 50, 100 years to see how tyranny develops and spreads. We saw that in 2020 through 2023 under coronavirus, where people were forced to stay home, forced to wear face masks, forced to take medical treatments that were largely experimental, forced to suffer the lies of government, right? Forced to stay out of church, for crying out loud, church, which is what our nation was built upon, belief in God, and forced to shut down and stifle views on social media, else face censorship. So yes, this can really happen in America. And I say that the Democrat Party would love and welcome for the opportunity to do this again in America, which is why, by the way, I wrote that other book you referenced, Lockdown.
Well, you know what, Miss Chumley, keep ringing that bell. You are a voice that needs to be heard. Thank you so much for your dedication, all the work that you do. Thank you for your, may I say, bold and blunt voice as a true conservative Christian, fighting the good fight. We look forward to reading your books and continue to follow you. Thank you so much, and I hope to hear from you soon again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
God bless you.
Bless.